If you had asked me the day before, was it adequate for holding animals, I would have told you yes. Obviously, it wasn't.
Now trying to find out what happened. I'm telling you, there's a couple of factors here. What motivates a tiger to jump out of its enclosure that it's lived in its whole life?
What would you have to do to provoke a tiger to come out of that?
It has to be pretty serious. To provoke a tiger, because they're solitary animals, they don't like to fight, but once convinced to fight, there's nothing that stops them. So the tiger would have to have been pushed very, very hard.
For years, critics have been questioning how it's managed and how it cares for the animals. CBS 5 investigative reporter Anna Werner here with why some activists are saying this incident is a reflection on those troubles.
And the question, Alan, was the attack an accident or an accident that was bound to happen?
Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sid, and in today's video I am going to be talking about the tiger attacks at the San Francisco Zoo. But first I want to say a big thank you for 200,000 subscribers, and rest in peace to Jane Goodall. Let's pour one out for Jane. See, I do water my plant sometimes. Anyway, San Francisco is actually named after the patron saint of animals, so it makes sense that the zoo is always in the news for animal-related stuff. But it is usually not in a good way. There has been a lot going on at this zoo for a long time, and many wrong decisions have come back to bite them. When the tiger attacks happened, it raised some questions around the welfare of the other animals at the zoo, and since the zoo is owned by the city itself, the San Francisco supervisor, Chris Daly, wanted to turn the zoo into a sanctuary. So he wanted it to become an animal facility that only housed rescue animals. And that was a pretty big deal. Never before has an accredited zoo turned into an actual sanctuary. So board meetings were held where the public, animal experts, and zoo staff could give their thoughts. There were a lot of arguments for it.
I'm excited about the potential of the ordinance. It is the best opportunity to turn the direction away from the slow, sad decline that the zoo is currently experiencing.
I would be proud for our city zoo to rescue animals. There's a lot of animals that do need rescue, and I think it's a really good thing, so thank you.
Also, this will serve as an enlightened model for zoos throughout the country and instill pride in the residents of our fair city. I've lived here my whole life. I'm very proud of San Francisco, and I would very much support a rescue facility. In fact, many of my wealthy friends would more likely visit the zoo if it were more of a rescue and conservation facility. Thank you.
And a lot of arguments were against it.
I would not be inclined to continue visiting the zoo if it were turned into a rescue zoo facility. It seems a sad view of the world to only expose children to hurt or ill animals versus healthy, vibrant ones.
The world today is going green. It's a natural balance, and it's not all about taking care of a rescue animal. We do love rescue animals. Most of us have rescue animals, and they're wonderful animals. But also, what about the natural species around us?
If the zoo becomes a rescue facility, there will be a dramatic decline in revenues. It limits the animals that we could obtain, and I would offer a challenge. If you really are serious about wanting to have a dedicated rescue facility, then why not go somewhere else and build one? Why do you have to destroy an institution that exists, that provides educational opportunities?
Thank you very much, but I think that the answer is that the city owns the zoo. Next speaker, please.
The Association of Zoos and Aquariums, also known as the AZA, threatened to take away the zoo's accreditation if it became an actual sanctuary. The AZA actually already threatened to take away the accreditation of the San Fran Zoo in 2004 when they sent one of their elephants to a sanctuary. The AZA's threat of accreditation removal helped the city decide whether or not they wanted to recreate the San Fran Zoo. But after attempts to come to a compromise, the idea failed in a 7-4 vote by city board members. What prompted such a drastic attempt at change all began with a Siberian tiger named Tatiana. She was originally born at the Denver Zoo on June 27, 2003, and brought to the San Fran Zoo as a companion for their 14-year-old male tiger, Tony. She was 3.5 years old when she arrived at the zoo on December 16th, 2005. But just over a year later, the zoo may have been having some regrets about bringing her there. For 6 days a week at 2 p.m., the zoo would do public big cat feedings in a building called the Lion House.
Okay, this is my Siberian tiger. Okay, these are the 2 Sumatran tigers that are going to come in.
The hungry cats don't waste a moment when the door opens. They know it's feeding time.
Are you kidding? The margin for error here seems extraordinary. Now, see, that's just weird what you're doing.
Oh, he's a baby.
He's a baby?
He's a big baby.
Oh, my God. Gee, are you kidding me? Wow, she's hungry. Down we
Okay,
go.
we're getting in tiger territory, so you got to be a little more careful.
Hey there. Yes, you do look angry. You look very angry. Why is he so angry, Lori?
So this is just normal behavior.
Well, they get frosted flakes out of that, I'll never know.
Zookeeper Lori Comergen was the one doing the feeding on December 22nd, 2006. She is a single mother of 1 and a gifted artist. She has even won competitions for her artworks before. When she first started working for the zoo in 1995, she was the zoo's part-time zoo illustrator, as well as working with the carnivores. She was known as the carnivore chick amongst the zookeepers. So by 2006, she was well experienced with the happenings of the zoo and how things worked. The way the public feedings worked was by dropping some meat down a chute for the tiger to receive on their side of the cage, or by putting it through a little swinging door. So there's never any unobstructed contact with the cats, but during this process, bits of meat fall onto the ground or through the grate of a drain outside the cage. That day, a piece of meat had fallen into the drain, and Lori tried to grab it, but instead something grabbed her. Tatiana reached under the bars of the cage and grabbed Lori with her paws and held onto her left arm as she chewed her hand and part of her right arm. 50 visitors watched as this happened, and visitor Vikram Chari told the publication SF Gate the tiger ate her hand. It slowly proceeded to eat the rest of her arm. 3 men who were visitors tried to pull her away from Tati, but that only caused her to pull back harder on Lori's arm. It wasn't until a zoo employee whacked Tati over the head with a long pole that she finally released Lori. Vikram Chari said, "I think most of the right arm doesn't exist anymore. What was left was hanging in strings. The tiger didn't eat it in a very clean way." Lori spent many weeks in hospital and underwent many surgeries for the doctors to fix her up as best they could. They were able to reattach parts of her arm and hand and used skin grafts to replace the missing skin. Unfortunately, she did lose some function in her right arm. The zoo fortunately didn't euthanize Tati over this.
Zoo officials, they made the decision not to euthanize the animal. They instead fortified or refortified that particular area. They thought it was a safe environment both for the tiger and for the patrons. California's
Division of Occupational Safety and Health blamed the zoo for the attack and received an $18,000 penalty for it. They closed the Lion House for 10 months and spent $250,000 in safety upgrades. What they didn't realize at the time was the outdoor tiger exhibit also needed safety upgrades. Almost exactly a year after the first attack, on December 25th, 2007, Tatiana struck again. At around 5 p.m., which was closing time for the zoo, 3 boys were outside of the outdoor tiger exhibit. One was 17-year-old Carlos Souza Jr., and the others were 2 brothers, 19-year-old Paul and 23-year-old Kuba Dhaliwal. Out of nowhere, Tatiana appeared outside of her cage and began to attack the boys. She first went for Kulbir, clawing at him and biting him. His younger brother and Carlos were screaming at Tati, trying to get her to get off of him. And it worked, but she instead turned her attention to Carlos. She grabbed him and pretty quickly ripped into his neck, killing him. Earlier that day, the boys had eaten nachos at a zoo cafe 300 yards away, so they headed back there in the hopes of finding help. Since the zoo was in the process of closing, the doors to the cafe were locked. The manager of the cafe was still inside and saw them, but refused to let them in. Retail staff at the zoo hadn't been trained in emergency procedures and drills for animal escapes. But that retail worker did notify the zoo's security, and it was them who called emergency services at 5:04. A keeper soon arrived and spoke to emergency services on the same phone, believing that the boys were on drugs and that an animal hadn't escaped. The brothers were also telling the staff about Carlos, but they didn't know what they were talking about.
I don't know if they're on drugs or what. They're screaming about an animal that has attacked them, but there's no animal out. He's talking about a third person, and I don't see a third person.
Oh, so is he saying that he was bitten? It's an adult male. Is he saying that he was bitten?
Yeah, he's saying that it's an adult male. We don't know if he's on drugs.
Is the patient saying that he was bitten by an animal?
He's saying that it's bitten by an animal, but there's no animal escape because he could just be crazy.
Okay.
But the zoo soon took them seriously when a tiger was spotted prowling through the zoo. In a later report about the situation, the staff member who saw Tati described her as walking calmly on the public path. She passed exhibits with warthog and deer in them and completely ignored them. It was believed she was following the blood trail left behind by the injured brother. While she was distracted with finding the brothers, that allowed zookeeper Anthony Brown to check on Carlos. He was a trained shooter and arrived with a 12-gauge shotgun just in case, and he drove to Carlos through the zoo in his personal car. In the chaos of everything, he was unable to locate the keys to two of the zoo's vehicles. When he reached Carlos, it was clear he was dead, but he still provided him with medical attention. Tati was still making her way through the zoo as emergency services arrived and were waiting outside for several minutes while the zookeepers tried to get everything under control. At the time, keepers believed that all of the tigers must have escaped, like maybe a door was left open or something, so they rushed to check on all of the tigers' cages to make sure that the other tigers were accounted for. Emergency services couldn't enter the zoo if there were a bunch of dangerous animals running around. During that time, Kulbir called 911, expressing frustration for how long it was taking for them to come into the zoo.
I'm just going to stay on the line with you until the paramedics are with you, all right? Okay, excuse me. Can you check up on them? We'll see where they're at. They're on scene right now, but they have to stage until they're given permission to go inside. It's come out of knife and get all over. Okay, no, I understand that, but at the same time, we have to make sure the paramedics don't get chewed out, because if the paramedics get hurt, then nobody's going to help. Okay, I understand that. All right? I'm trying in here. Okay, the ambulance is staging. I need you to understand that if the ambulance people, paramedics, calm down. All right? I am going to stay on the line with you. If the paramedics get hurt, they cannot help your brother. So you need to calm down. And you are going to be the best help for your brother right now. What's going on here? It's been, okay. I've been on the call with you for 8 minutes. I called 10 minutes before. Okay. 20 minutes. Okay, I'm trying to explain to you that we have to make sure that we can get inside safely. All right? How long does it take? I do not know that because I'm not out there right now. But we have specialists. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 17, 22, we have 16 different police units plus about 6 different paramedic and fire department personnel out there trying to We just have to make sure that the tiger doesn't hurt any of the emergency units. Otherwise, there's going to be nobody to help you, all right? So just stay calm. I'm going to stay on the phone with you.
The phone abruptly disconnected, but the boys did begin to receive first aid. Since it was Christmas time, an ice rink had been installed in the zoo grounds, and a seasonal worker who overheard what was happening over the radio system rushed to help out. They tried to stop the injured brothers' bleeding as best they could, but they didn't get to do that for very long because Tati found them. She approached them and swiped at their legs, and at that point she allowed the ice skating rink worker to move away, but she would not let the brothers move away because they were who she was looking for. At 5:20, emergency services finally entered the zoo. They first checked on Carlos before finding the brothers. As police got closer, Tati only continued to attack the brothers more. Officers used their patrol car lights to distract her, and it eventually worked. At 5:27, she turned her attention to the police, and that was when 4 officers shot 14 bullets at her. 3 of them made contact and killed her. The brothers, on the other hand, survived and were taken to hospital. But Carlos did not survive, and it was the first time that an animal had ever escaped an AZA-accredited facility and killed a visitor. So there were a lot of questions around how it could have happened in the first place. And the brothers, for some reason, weren't interested in helping them work out how it happened.
Sebastian, the San Francisco Chronicle is reporting that the living victims that are still in the hospital, that they are not cooperating with law enforcement.
That's absolutely what we understand. In fact, it's not only the law enforcement they've not been cooperative with. We understand they were combative at the time they were being taken to the hospital, in fact, swearing at some of the doctors that were trying to treat them that night.
Unimaginable.
While it was a first for the zoo for an animal to escape and kill a visitor, it already had its fair share of issues when it came to the cages. In 2004, 2 of their elephants died from causes related to their cramped captivity. In another world first, the penguins at the San Fran Zoo were the first in the world to catch the sexually transmitted infection chlamydia. It's not fully understood how they caught it to begin with, and they didn't fully know how to treat it. But zookeeper Jane Tellino had an idea. She was a long-time zookeeper, and the zoo didn't want to listen to her, and she actually resigned over it. Jane had also previously been attacked by a leopard at the zoo. Also, a visitor in 1997 witnessed a tiger jump up and hold onto the ledge of the outdoor tiger exhibit.
Marion Roth-Kramer says she warned the zoo about its tiger exhibit when she visited 10 years ago.
I saw a paw on top of the grass, which was like maybe 4 or 5 feet away from my son.
Roth-Kramer says she wrote a letter to the zoo complaining that a tiger jumped dangerously close to her 3-year-old child.
So things were far from suitable for the animals there in many ways. Many of the enclosures were outdated and had become the target of many animal welfare advocates.
These animals are kept in critically small areas, fraction of a percent of what they would normally have in the wild. And that creates all sorts of stresses that, just wouldn't happen in the wild.
Like in the San Francisco Zoo's Lion House. A city audit in 2000 found it outdated, calling its animal facilities adequate but minimal.
The zoo was actually given a $48 million bond in 1997, but instead of using it to upgrade enclosures, they used it to build visitor amenities.
Most of the money was spent on cafeterias and amenities for the public, and nothing was done to the cat exhibit, to the elephant exhibit, to anything else.
Their questionable decisions around what they spent their funding on continued to be apparent after Tatiana's attack, because 3 weeks later, a leopard chewed out of its cage.
The San Francisco Zoo is having to deal with yet another incident this morning regarding an animal. The zoo itself has not confirmed anything, but according to our CBS partner in the Bay Area, a 90-pound snow leopard somehow forced an opening in a steel mesh wall that was separating its feeding cage from a normally secure zookeeper service area. The zookeeper moved to a safe area and then used food to lure the leopard back into a secure cage. Sources say that zookeepers call this a near miss.
So clearly the animals did not want to be in their cages. But after the attack, the zoo made emergency upgrades to the tiger exhibit to ensure that no more tigers would ever escape. The zoo locked its big cats in the lion house, while a construction crew built a glass extension around the outside of the tiger exhibit. It would raise the barrier to 19 feet. The upgrades cost the zoo $600,000 more than the zoo's annual $1 million maintenance budget. The zoo had to be closed for 9 days and lost about $1.1 million in revenue, but it had to be done. Previously, there were no barriers obstructing the view of the big cats, and at the time of the attack, there was an empty 33-foot wide moat and a supposedly 18-foot high concrete wall which was supposed to prevent anything from getting out. Because there were no doors or anything left open, it was presumed Tati jumped out of the exhibit. So that is what they needed to prevent any other big cats from doing.
She had to have jumped. How she was able to jump that high is amazing to me, but you know, it's an exotic animal.
While they were making sure the exhibit was impossible to be jumped out of, the zoo provided updates for the big cats that were being kept indoors.
Hi, my name is Amy, and I'm one of the lion housekeepers here at the San Francisco Zoo. Due to the unfortunate tragedy that occurred on Christmas of 2007, our big cats are currently residing inside of the building. Some of the challenges we face with the cats being inside is trying to invent ways of keeping them entertained or stimulated. A few of the things we do are give them spices in bales of hay or perfume that they like, which they like to rub on. We also give them urine from other animals to smell, as well as boxes, cardboard, balls, anything to play with.
Zoo staff also created a makeshift memorial for Tati at a tiger statue in the zoo. And when the zoo reopened, visitors were able to leave tributes to her. And by that time, it was becoming clearer how exactly Tati escaped from her cage. While the zoo was closed, it was considered a crime scene because there may have been human involvement with Tati's escape.
Primary focus of our investigation was to determine if there was a link to an intentional release of the animal or any link to criminal conduct.
But the most human involvement they believe ended up happening was the boys crossing the fence that separated the public from the ledge of the moat and then dangling one of their legs into Tati's exhibit.
But overnight, they found a bloody shoe not here where the public is supposed to be, but over here on the other side of a fence that is supposed to separate the public from the tigers. What is significant about that is this. At the same time, they also found a footprint on the metal fence. At this point, the leading theory from zoo officials here is that someone either dangled their leg or some body part over into the animal's area. Now, one of the officials with the zoo is telling the San Francisco Chronicle that they believe there is no way this tiger, under normal circumstances, could have made it from here all the way over to here. But they say if there was a human leg, something dangling over this fence, that could have provided just enough to get that tiger up and over that fence. So that's the critical point that we're talking about. The bloody shoe that was found, the footprint on the metal fence, that's what's significant from the police today.
But it was soon discovered she may not have needed any help to escape. Despite the zoo originally reporting that the wall in the tiger exhibit was 18 feet high, it was actually just 12.5 foot high, which is 4 foot shorter than what the Association of Zoos and Aquariums recommended. But that recommendation is just that. It is a suggestion that the AZA cannot enforce. So zoos can make the heights of their barriers or walls basically whatever works for them. Oftentimes, it takes real events like the Tati escape for them to know what exactly works for them. Other zoos also operate based on what works for other zoos as well. The Oakland Zoo's tiger fence was a foot taller than the San Fran Zoo's fence, but still below the recommended height. So in the wake of what happened with Tati, they decided to increase the height of their fence. A necropsy was conducted on Tati, and according to the condition of her claws, it appeared as though she was able to jump out of the exhibit in one go.
The front claws were not frayed. She didn't like grab on something and then pull down. She was already up. Her hind legs were what were used to allow her to gain the traction to get up and out. Her first attempt was successful.
She had also lost 50 pounds since arriving at the zoo, and there was a belief that she may have wanted to attack because she was hungry. But she had been fed a full meal at 2 p.m. that day, and the necropsy revealed she had undigested food in her stomach. Big cat experts also believed if she killed Carlos for food, she would not have left his body. So there were still questions around why she jumped out of her cage. If she could have jumped out at any time, why then? Since the victims weren't interested in helping answer that question, police obtained a search warrant to examine the brothers' mobile phones and car. Not a whole lot came from that, but the father of Carlos, the boy who died, signed an affidavit of what the brothers told him.
Now, an affidavit in the case indicates one of the brothers told Sousa's father that they were yelling and waving at the animal, but never dangled their legs or threw anything in the enclosure to provoke the animal.
As a part of Carlos's autopsy, a toxicology report was done, and it was discovered that alcohol and marijuana was in his system at the time of his death.
The toxicology results are in, and the San Francisco medical examiner says Carlos Sousa Jr. had marijuana and alcohol in his system.
In the USDA report, it noted that there was a pine cone and sticks found in the exhibit, which were foreign to the immediate area, so they would have had to have been thrown in. The theory was that while the boys were under the influence of drugs and alcohol, they taunted Tati, and she reacted to that by jumping out of her exhibit and attacking. Ultimately, the zoo was still at fault, and people had a lot to be mad at the zoo for. For one, they didn't follow their own emergency protocols.
What they did not do is that requires the zoo to secure visitors in buildings during the escape, which did not happen. A shooting team that is trained to tranquilize the animal also did not succeed in their attempts. It ultimately took 4 local police officers to shoot and put down the tiger.
The zoo did try to remedy things by putting up signs instructing people to not taunt the animals. They also hired a public relations firm who tried to put the blame onto the boys.
Originally, the brothers painted themselves as innocent victims in this tiger attack. As it turns out, as the story has unfolded, there was marijuana usage, there was liquor, and there was taunting of Tatiana the tiger. So it's a far different story than what they originally painted to the public.
Despite that, the zoo director at the time, Manuel Melindio, still received the most backlash. A public hearing was held for people to voice their opinions about the zoo and about Manuel.
The zoo employee was mauled by Tatiana, and what the zoo failed to look at the overall safety of all of the big cats. They changed the feeding procedures. They didn't even bother to go out and measure the molt.
If you want to have a better zoo, you need to replace the current director, Manuel. I know you're not going to resign. It would be crazy to give up a $330,000 job. So therefore, I think you need to be let go.
Molinado's boss came to his defense.
Irritated by all of these unknowing calls for his immediate resignation or firing. We do not know the facts.
But every day brings more rumors and speculation.
I feel certain that the animal was provoked.
A crowd of supporters for Molinado say he's not the one to blame.
Every day, people go to that zoo. Every day, that tiger sees people in it.
it's not going to just pick those boys because they look more tasty than any other boy. You know what I'm saying?
Manuel first became the zoo's director in 2004 after working at the Los Angeles Zoo, and at the San Fran Zoo he actually seemed to do a pretty good job at increasing attendance. Zoo memberships rose to a record-breaking 32,000, and the amount of visitors coming through the doors hadn't been that high in a very long time. Manuel told the LA Times, "The zoo had really turned a corner. Our attendance was the highest it had ever been since the pandas were brought in 20 years before." But despite that, after heavy scrutiny after the tiger attacks, he decided to resign. So basically, the zoo is owned by the city, but is run by a non-profit called San Francisco Zoological Society. At the time, the non-profit was made up of 60 board members. To be a board member, you have to make a yearly donation of $10,000, but also make an initial donation of $50,000. So it doesn't really matter who you are able to be involved in the zoo's decision making as long as you pay. If they were to give power back to the city, it would apparently cost taxpayers $12 million. So the decision making is left to the board members. One of the decisions the board members make is who becomes the zoo director, and the zoo director gets chosen out of this pool of board members. After Manuel resigned, board members voted for a woman named Tanya Peterson to become the zoo director. She was a lawyer and had no experience in animal care, zoo management, and non-profit leadership whatsoever. So that's why I wanted to give a little bit of an explanation for how a zoo director at the San Fran Zoo is chosen. That is how a lawyer becomes a zoo director. It's pretty much a popularity contest. But she still did have plans for the zoo, and one of those plans was to thwart the possibility of getting the zoo turned into a rescue facility. She was against it because it could have caused the zoo to lose donors.
But this legislation is requiring me to put all of my resources into making this a rescue zoo. That means I've got to stop the 166,000 outreach programs to students. There are costs, high costs associated with the care of rescue animals. But more importantly, donors restrict their funds to certain education and outreach and at-risk youth. We've already heard from one education grant that after this year, they're no longer going to fund us because they don't want to fund a rescue facility. It's a matter of resources that people have to connect, not only with the bird with the broken wing who cannot fly, but people have to connect with the majesty of a lion or the gracefulness of giraffe. Those connections will be lost if we have to focus only on the rescue animal. We have been building naturalistic habitats that respect, connect, and save the animals. We need to do more of that. I don't think turning this into a rescue zoo in its entirety will put us into the zoos that in the zoo of the future that this community demands.
Had she agreed to turn the zoo into a sanctuary, things might have been a little easier for her, because things were pretty chaotic for the zoo when she took over. Because of the attack, the zoo could be hit with heavy fines from regulators, be stripped of its exhibitor's license, or even face criminal charges for negligent homicide. But pretty much the only repercussions the zoo received on a state and federal level was the USDA fining them $1,875 for flaws with the tiger exhibit. But for the victims of the tiger attacks, it was a different story. Carlos's family and the brothers sued the zoo. Carlos's family believed it didn't matter why Tati attacked, she shouldn't have been able to escape under any circumstances.
It doesn't matter. It could be taunting, throwing rocks. They can do whatever they want. The animal is not supposed to escape no matter what. Something was done wrong there.
They filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the zoo and the city, and it settled for an undisclosed amount. When it came to the brothers, they believed the zoo started a smear campaign against them. The public relations firm the zoo hired denied any smearing.
Do you think you slandered the two boys?
Absolutely not.
Sam Singer says all his information about the Dhaliwal brothers came from police and city officials, and sometimes from us, the media. He calls the allegations of slander a cheap defense tactic.
The brothers eventually settled with the zoo in 2009 for $900,000. Lori Comergen, the keeper from the first attack, had also filed a lawsuit. In her suit, she accused the city of negligence for failing to place proper safeguards that would have prevented the tiger from reaching out of the cage. The case settled in December 2008 for an undisclosed amount. Lori actually continues to work for the zoo, but in the Lima department. Despite those lawsuits being settled, things continued to be rocky for the zoo. The actions the zoo took following Tatiana's attack are still impacting it to this day, and it all stemmed from Tanya's leadership and where funds were being used. There were still countless safety issues when it came to animals and the staff. A baby gorilla was crushed to death by a door, a bear escaped but was able to be contained, a guillotine door crushed a penguin, and many more things.
We've had animals escaping their cages and killing patrons. We've had people getting into the zoo and stealing animals. We've had animals dying from failing infrastructure.
A website called SF Zoo Watch has even been created by a man named Justin Barker, keeping the public updated by all of the unfortunate happenings at the zoo. So things have been pretty bad, but the brutal animal deaths only scratched the surface. It wasn't until April 2024 where there was a tipping point for staff at the zoo. Much to their surprise, the city announced that the zoo would receive pandas from China. That was going to cost the city $70 million, and many staff at the zoo felt as though they couldn't even house the animals they currently had, let alone pandas. And that $70 million would go a long way to improve the care and exhibits for the animals they already had. So since Tanya was in charge, the zoo's union decided to express how they felt about her. They needed it to be known that bringing the pandas to the zoo was a bad idea. They cast a vote of 97% of no confidence in Tanya, and in a leaked document they detailed their specific issues. The San Francisco Chronicle and the LA Times also did expose-type articles where they spoke to quite a number of staff about the concerns they had with the zoo. There were loads of safety concerns for the staff and the animals, and one of the zoo's biggest donors agreed.
Bringing in pandas today to our zoo would be like exhibiting the Mona Lisa in an old, cracked, leaking barn.
John McNellis is a real estate developer and philanthropist. He's also one of the zoo's top donors.
In the late 60s, I think I went to the zoo for the very first time and I fell in love with it.
McNellis says with the current conditions of the zoo, the Panda Project should not be a top priority. That disagreement has caused a rift to the point McNellis has made a tough decision.
Until we have a new administration at the zoo, we are going to withhold contributions.
Tanya actually resigned from the zoo in August of this year, 2025, but it does still look like the plan for pandas is happening. The zoo has a history of poor judgment, especially when it came to Tatiana, so hopefully it doesn't repeat its mistakes with the pandas. But anyways, that is pretty much everything for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Let's take a moment of silence for Tatiana, all of the other animals at the zoo, and Lori Comergen. And I will see you in my next video.